Week 15 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few tight ends I would start this week. The first guy, Zach Ertz of the Arizona Cardinals. So Zach Ertz here, the last few weeks, he really hasn't done much except that big ball game in Week 11. So Week 11 at Seattle, 8 catches, 88 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Week 13 at the Bears, he put up a dud performance, 1 catch, 10 yards. And then Week 14 versus the Rams, a decent PPR day, 5 catches, 42 yards, including getting stopped at the 1 yard line where he almost scored a touchdown. But the crown of the ball wasn't over the goal line where he had to come back and get it. But this week here, it's going to be a field day for this Arizona Cardinal team. And the Detroit Lion team, that's the worst team in football. I've won 11-1 on the season here. And it's an indoor game, obviously. And Zach Ertz, he's going to pick apart those linebackers over there in Detroit, in my opinion. And I think he has a big ball game this week, is Ertz. 70 or 80 yards at least in this one. And he finds the end zone. And I would start him with confidence at a weak tight end position this week. The next tight end is Mike Gesicki of the Miami Dolphins. So Mike Gesicki, it's been a great season for him. And a breakout season, no doubt about it, in my opinion, for Gesicki this season. So the last few games for him, Week 11 at the Jets, 5 catches, 50 yards. Week 12 versus Carolina, 3 catches, 17 yards. And Week 13 versus the Giants, 7 catches, 46 yards. So right here, another matchup in Week 15 versus the New York Jets that give up the 8th most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. And Gesicki and Tua, they got a good rapport as the weeks have went on. And in my other start videos, I mentioned a lot of Miami Dolphins as players to start. I think Tua has a good game. I know Waddle will have a good game most likely. And Gesicki this week here, I think easily in PPR leagues. He could get anywhere from 12 to 15 fantasy points. This guy gets peppered with targets as well. Him and Tua have a good rapport. And this Jet linebacker crew really isn't that good, in my opinion, here in coverage. So Mike Gesicki, I think, in this game has a solid one. Like I mentioned, anywhere from 12 to 15 fantasy points. Next tight end's Pat Freiermuth of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Freiermuth dropped a touchdown in the end zone last week, where he would have had a huge fantasy game at the tight end position. But he still ended up last week with a solid one. 2 catches, 32 yards, and a touchdown. So if he caught that ball in the back of the end zone as time ran out at the Minnesota Vikings, that was about a 20-yard play here. He would have had a 20-point fantasy day. But the last few weeks here for Muth, Week 12 at Cincinnati, 4 catches, 40 yards, a touchdown. Week 13 versus the Baltimore Ravens, 3 catches, 26 yards, and a 2-point conversion. And Week 14 in Minnesota, like you mentioned, 2 for 32 and a touchdown. So this week here on paper, tough matchup versus Tennessee. That gives up the 6th least amount of fantasy points to tight ends on the season. But Muth here, he's a tight end that goes out there and makes plays, and he's a Ben Roethlisberger favorite and security blanket, in my opinion. So I think this week here, Muth, he could have a good ball game in this one, 40 or 50 yards, and he's a big red zone target. And I think he could find the end zone. So I would start him this week. The next tight end's Rob Gronkowski of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Gronk, he never lost it, no doubt about it. Just injuries have been the problem for him over the last 2 seasons since he returned to the NFL. So this season he missed weeks 4 to 10. But the last few weeks here since he returned, Gronk's putting up Gronk numbers. Week 12 at Indianapolis, 7 catches, 123 yards. Week 13 at Atlanta, 4 catches, 58 yards, and 2 TDs. And Week 14 versus Buffalo, 5 catches, 62 yards. So this week here versus the New Orleans Saints, I think he has a good ball game on Sunday Night Football versus division rival. Here's Rob Gronkowski. He's unguardable in my opinion. He's a guy that's still going out there, running all the routes, breaking tackles, throwing good blocks. And in this game here versus the Saints, I think he has a good one, 50 or 60 yards in this one. And he finds the end zone. And the 5th and final tight end I would start this week, Dawson Knox of the Buffalo Bills. So Dawson Knox here, he's been a breakout tight end this season, no doubt about it, for the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen. He was banged up early in the year as well with a hand injury that cost him 3 weeks of the season. But the last few weeks here, he's been playing good football once again. Week 12 in New Orleans, 3 catches, 32 yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 13 versus the New England Patriots in a crazy win game where 50-mile-per-hour winds. Obviously, he wasn't going to do much. 2 catches, 14 yards. And then Week 14 at Tampa Bay, 7 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown. So this week here versus the Carolina Panthers, I think Dawson Knox once again finds the end zone. We know Josh Allen's banged up with his injury, but Allen's a gamer. Buffalo needs the games now where they've been really struggling, losing 3 out of 4 games, and he's going to be on the field. And Dawson Knox in this offense, in this passing game, is the second option, in my opinion, behind Stephon Diggs. So I think this week here, he's a must-start and a tight end that'll put up numbers. So that's a few tight ends I would start here for Week 15 of the fantasy football season.